Hello everyone and welcome to Pushing Positivity on the Pier, where we introduce amazing people, take a deeper look into their story, and share how they're making positivity actionable each day. I'm Josh Schiller and today we are joined by blogger, motivational speaker, and author, Christophe Lafontant. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Wow, can't believe we're here.
Me neither. I'm happy to be here.
I just read your book yesterday and all I can say is what an amazing story.
I can't believe how fast you finished. That was really surprising to me.
So I wanted to really share not only just your amazing story, but your perspective on life as well. So just to give everybody a little bit of an introduction, your childhood was not normal to say the least.
Yeah, 6 years old. I came down with a mysterious heart condition. Doctors really didn't know what the cause of it was, and I had a pacemaker implanted. I had about 10 years with my pacemaker, and then I underwent my first heart transplant.
So let's just go back a little bit. You know, growing up, having a pacemaker. I mean, that's not a normal. It's not a normal thing for a child to go through. How did that affect, I guess, just how you went through your normal everyday life?
I'd say for the most part, it didn't affect me on my day-to-day level because I could do pretty much whatever I wanted as a kid, with the exception of participating in things like competitive sports. I think for me, the thing that impacted me the most was the social aspect. I didn't want to be viewed as the sick kid around friends and peers. So I kind of did whatever I could to hide that aspect of my life and just kind of fit into the fold and have that go unnoticed, so to speak.
So get through our childhood, we kind of overcome the adversity of having the pacemaker. Life is normal.
Yeah.
And then the age of 17 comes along. What happens there?
Well, what happened was, with the pacemaker, my body had been doing so well. However, when I started to go through puberty, my heart just couldn't keep up with the changes of my body. So that's when the heart started to fail on me. They thought about putting in another pacemaker, and then when they saw the deterioration of my heart, I underwent a transplant evaluation here in New York. And it was at that time decided that I needed a heart transplant. So they put me on the list. Within 5 days, I had received a heart, which for most people that know transplants, that's practically unheard of. 5 days. I mean, people wait a long, long time on that list.
Yeah, I mean, 5 days, like you said,
it's like a miracle. I mean, honest.
And so just to give you your background of the family, you have some siblings, right? So
yes.
You're one of how many?
Oh, okay. I'm one of, there's 5 of us. And it's a little complicated because one of my siblings I didn't actually find out about until I was about 26, 27. I have an older brother who is a half brother of mine. My father had him when he was 18, but I never think of him as a half brother. It's kind of just like a technicality. I have a younger brother, I have a younger sister, and then the baby of the family who just turned 18.
So I know that you had said that a big part of really what kept you going time and time again, regardless of the adversity you went through, was that family and that support system.
Yeah.
Especially your mother.
Yeah, yeah. I would not be here today if not for my family. My family is everything to me, and I know that the reason I've come so far is because of them, their love, their support, and I could have never done it alone. So I've been very fortunate in that regard.
So we had the support system, which still didn't make going through having a pacemaker at 6, a heart transplant at 17. I mean, regardless of the support system you have, I mean, that must have been scary for you.
Oh, it was. I mean, something like a transplant, was so unheard of and bizarre to me. Like the idea of somebody else's heart being put into my body, I couldn't process that. And then when I would read about it or research and hear the process and the stories and the myths, the urban legends about what happens after as a teenager, it freaked me out. I mean,
What were some of those urban myths that you heard?
all kinds of things. That, you know, the spirit like comes into your body after transplant, and you aren't yourself anymore, or you know, you start experiencing visions and things like that. It's just, people will say all kinds of crazy things, and naturally
Found on the Google, right?
Yes.
Of course.
Found on Google. And your mind just kind of runs away with you because it's the unknown. And as with many situations, we fear the unknown. And for me, that was especially difficult. It wasn't until the point that I started to feel so sick that I just kind of gave in to the acceptance that, listen, it's either this or die, you know, and death was just never an option for me, ever.
So we get through our first transplant, 17 years old. We're in the clear, right?
That's what you would think. And that was just the beginning. If someone had told me, I would have never seen myself being here today as happy and as strong as I am, because what came after the first transplant, I thought the transplant was going to be the end-all be-all, and like you said, one and done. And it was just the start of my journey, you know.
So we actually returned to, again, we'll say normalcy after the first transplant. You actually attended Columbia University, right?
Almost better than normal, because I had never felt that kind of, that level of quality of life at all. You know, there was always different aches and pains. After my transplant was the first time I really felt the healthiest. And I had more energy. It's almost like I didn't realize how sick I was until getting the new heart. And that kind of became dangerous because I took advantage of that feeling. You know, it got to my head, and after a while, I went nuts in college. Yeah.
So that was normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, to be expected, but I didn't realize how dangerous of a game I was playing.
So you get the new heart, now you're in college, you're living the college life. And for anybody that doesn't know, when you get a transplant, you're on a ton of medication, right? In terms of anti-rejection medication and things that actually stop your body from actually attacking the new organ, right?
Exactly. And the one thing that they stress more than anything is that you have to take your medication regularly on time to maintain certain levels. And for me, my mother was always in charge of my medication. She's a physician, so she took on that responsibility. However, when she sent me off to college, that responsibility then fell on me. And like you said, it's a lot of pills, and I just wasn't as strict with taking them. So, you know, if I was running late to class or I fell asleep, sometimes I would start taking them late. We're talking about 15 minutes. 15 minutes turned into half an hour. Half an hour turned into an hour, and that turned into missing entire doses. And then the problem with that was that even though I was missing doses, I was still feeling good for months after that. So it kind of reinforced this idea of, well, hey, I missed a few doses and nothing's happening, so it couldn't really be that serious. Then, when I finally started to experience symptoms, it was too late to do anything about it. And the doctors, they literally said my heart had turned to putty. And so, after having gone through all of that to get a new heart and to find out that I was back in a situation where I needed a second heart because of something I did, now we're not just talking about physical illness, we're talking about shame on top of that. And like just, I was disgusted with myself. Like, how could I have let that happen? And so you beat yourself up, you go into like depression and anxiety, because now it's not a fear of the unknown, it's a fear of the known. Because I had lived through a heart transplant. I knew exactly what having a heart transplant meant. And it was almost better going into it not knowing, because then you just take it as it comes. The second time around, knowing that I'd have to do that all over, a nightmare. A nightmare. 7 months in the ICU. When I think about it myself, I don't know how I did it. It's only when I like break it down moment by moment. And like I said, I think about times with my family, people being there at the bedside, people sending things, writing cards, that like motivation to keep going, and having people, you know, people like you out there in the world that are telling you, listen, you can get up, you can do this. It means more than a lot of people realize.
So, first off, thank you. For people that may not have that support system, right? Because that's a challenge for a lot of people that may not have that built-in family. And you know, I remember at one point in your room you said you had all these hearts where people have visited you, and you know, feeling that love is definitely something that can get you through those tough times. What, I guess, advice or what insight can you give people that during those times, if they don't have that support, like what were some ways when you were by yourself, if there ever was a moment where you were, that you pushed through?
For me, faith was a big security for me. When I felt alone, I felt like I could always turn to God, turn to prayer, and I found a lot of comfort in that. Also, being able to reach out to the hospital staff, I relied on them because they, in a sense, became family to me. You know, and I think the responsibility doesn't just lie on us, but it relies on other people to recognize if you see somebody is struggling, you know, offering any kind of help or just letting them know that you're around, that makes all the difference in the world. Because sometimes you can affect someone and not even realize it. So me, myself, knowing that, I try to be there for people that necessarily I don't have to be. It's just I know the impact I can have just by saying, hey, I'm here if you need, you know, and you can reach out anytime you want. So I think if more people were conscious of that, that could make a big difference too.
Checking in.
Yeah.
Saying hello.
That's all it takes.
Being present.
That's it.
That can go such a long way. Presence can be a present.
Yeah.
So now we're in ICU for 7 months. Were you in the hospital at this point when you got the call for the second heart?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so now we get the call that a second heart was available for you. What's that feeling at that point? And you're 21 at this point, right?
Yes. I spent my 21st birthday in the ICU of the hospital. I got a birthday cake from the child life specialist and my mom. They coordinated that.
Is that Sally?
Yes. Yeah. Incredible woman.
What's up, Sally? High five.
She was there for me, I mean, through procedures, through that whole stay with the 7 months. And that's what I'm talking about with that sense of family with the staff. When I received the second heart, I was so desperately ill that time. I wanted relief so badly that there was no fear going into surgery. I was gasping for air when I got that call. First time around, I was more conscious and more aware of what was going on because I wasn't that sick. You know, I wasn't on the brink of death. The second time around was a completely different story. They thought that because my kidneys failed while I was waiting for the heart, that they'd be able to transplant a kidney and heart simultaneously. But my body was just too weak for that. And on top of that, the kidneys that they found had antibodies that didn't go with my body. So I received the heart, but when I woke up from the transplant, I was on dialysis. And I was on dialysis for 2.5 years before finally getting my kidney.
Why do you need dialysis in the first place?
Well, when your kidneys aren't working, your kidneys are what cleanse your blood. So it's like your filtration system. When you're not able to eliminate that through your kidneys, dialysis is a machine that you're hooked up to, and it cleans your blood for you. Now, because of that, the process takes about 4 hours. So you have to be hooked up to this machine, but all your blood is being recycled through this machine. So naturally, you feel like crap afterwards. You feel nauseous, you feel weak. I mean, there's all kinds of symptoms that come with dialysis that people don't really talk about, you know? Whether they just want to be private or, again, like me, they just don't want to be seen as sick. But it's not easy. I mean, there were times that I really despised being on dialysis, and I didn't know how much more of it I could take.
So 2.5 years of that, you said some of the most challenging times. I mean, been through heart transplant, been through all these other things, and that was some of the most challenging time for you, right?
Yeah, or so I thought.
So it winds up now we're at a point where we're looking for a donor in terms of kidneys, and your brother comes along one day and he says, Kristoff, my man, I want to donate my kidney to you.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, you must have just sat back and were like, oh, I can't believe my brother's gonna do this for me. So you're in the clear yet again, right?
Yeah, because, you know, it's one thing to want to donate, but then you have to end up being a match. And that is where things get kind of tricky. But when my brother was tested and we got the phone call that he was not only a match, but a perfect match, like our tissue typing couldn't be any closer unless we were twins.
And that's not normal either.
No. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, there are instances in my life over and over and over again that are, it means something at the end of the day, you know? And so, yeah, we were all set for surgery. He was ready to go, he did, and he had no hesitation. We couldn't get in that OR fast enough. And a week before the surgery, we got a call to say that they found kidney stones in the last stage of testing in one of his kidneys, and he couldn't have the surgery. And to be completely honest, that crushed him more than it crushed me. And for me, that is love. Like, my brother was more devastated than I was.
It's amazing, man. I mean, testament to you as well, somebody that would be willing to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a purpose for you being here.
Yeah. But I think everything happens for a reason, and God forbid any one of his family needs that in the future, he can do it for them, you know? I'm okay, I'm good.
So we go through that where you're almost on this, again, this high of, I'm good, I got this match, it's my brother, I'm good, right? I'm good. And you had talked about it where you were literally, you were thinking about yourself at that point, right? Like to a point where he was like,
Yeah.
thinking about me, right? I'm
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. I got like a little cocky with it. Because in my mind, it was a sure thing. And so I hated dialysis so much. I remember kind of boasting and just walking in there in my last session, just kind of talking and being like, oh, you know, I don't have to come back here again. I'll never see you people again. And it was almost kind of like life was smacking me back in the face to remind me that things don't happen on my terms, you know? I don't run the universe, like things happen when they're supposed to. And so that was taken away from me quickly. And I was back on dialysis.
So we find out your brother's not a match,
Yes.
right? And then we have to go back into the dialysis, right? So at what point did you receive the kidney? And how much longer did you have to go through dialysis?
I was on dialysis after the news of my brother for about 3-4 more months. I would say that during those months, I didn't really need to get off dialysis anymore. I kind of went into this mode of acceptance and just like, this is what my life is right now, and I'm just going to make the best of the circumstances. I had a really, really rough day one morning when my vein was injured, and that was nearly my breaking point because the pain I had was so excruciating, and I really didn't know how I was going to keep going after that. But I had a conversation with my mother that evening, and together we kind of decided that this was going to be one more thing that we were going to fight. And within an hour after that conversation, I received a call that I was going to have my kidney transplant.
But you needed to be in the hospital within 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That must have been
Yeah.
pretty...
That was the one time that I was excited to rush to the hospital. That was the one surgery I was like amped up for because I couldn't believe it was happening. Listen, a kidney transplant is a huge deal. But when you've undergone 2 heart transplants,
Got some perspective.
yeah, you're now like, all right,
It's a kidney.
I could do the kidney.
So we get the kidney, right? New kidney. We're on 2 hearts. We're on the kidney at this point. Now we have to be in the clear, right?
Yes. Now now this is when I'm really thinking to myself, all right, I got a clean bill of health. This time I could just move forward. I'm not gonna mess around with my medication. I'm gonna play by the rules, and we should be good to go from here on out. And that's how I thought it was gonna go. But again, like I told you, you can't control life, and the universe works how it wants to work. And so it was months after that that I started to experience weakness in my limbs, which started out in my feet. I started to notice that I was tripping. I was having difficulty going up the stairs, which started out with, I was feeling like a twinge in my legs every time I'd go up each step. And then within a few more weeks, my legs started to feel really heavy. So going up the stairs, like 2 flights of stairs, was so tough for me. So I decided to say something to my mom, who happened to put me in touch with a colleague of hers who's a neurologist. She decided to send me for a muscle biopsy, which took about 6 weeks for us to get results. Now the thing is that when I got the results, I was in the hospital for a near overdose from pain medication, which was something I was dealing with, which was completely unrelated to my muscle
Where
weakness.
did that come from?
Years and years and years of being in and out of the hospital. I don't want to say accidentally, but I fell into abusing the medication that was supposed to be for my pain. Once I stopped taking the medication for physical pain and started to use it for emotional pain, that's when it started to become a problem for me. I had so much other things going on in my life. It wasn't just physical. There were I was still a growing man, and I was going through all these personal conflicts with sexual identity, things going on with my family. So that, with the emotional toll of being in and out of the hospital, these pain pills became my vice. They became like an escape, in a sense, for me to just shut out the world and shut out all those feelings. And, you know, similar to with the heart, when I realized I had a problem, it was too late.
So that moment happened where stuff came to a head.
Yeah.
What was that moment?
July 12th, 2010. It was the day before my birthday, and I woke up in a haze in our Florida condo, and thankfully, to the help of my siblings and my dad, they got me back to the hospital in New York, and I survived that entire experience. The doctors knew right away that it was an overdose.
So we get back to New York. We're back in the hospital.
Back in the hospital.
This time, it's your doing again. At this point, we had also, something else was uncovered at this point as well.
Yes. You had asked about my siblings before, and it was at that time that we discovered as a family that my father had been leading a double life and had a second family down in Florida, and that I had a 12-year-old brother that I never knew about, that I never met. He knew everything about me. You know, he knew about my siblings and I, but I had no idea about him.
So, again, now that's just on the personal, the family side, but now on the medical side as well, there was something else there as well.
Yes. So the results that I talked about from the muscle biopsy came, and it was shown that I had a rare muscle genetic disorder called myofibrillar myopathy.
What's that?
It's a mutation in my Desmond gene of my DNA, which basically means that the muscles in my body, certain muscle groups are affected. It varies from patient to patient. For me, particularly, it's my legs, my arms, hands, feet, shoulders. It attacks your internal muscles as well. So that's where my respiratory failure came from and why I have the trach. It's also the reason for my initial heart issue when I was 6 years old.
Only finding that out at 27.
Yeah. Yeah. Then it all made sense. Because up until then, it was all speculation what happened to me when I was 6. So those results essentially confirmed that everything I had gone through was tied together.
So we get this news from every angle at this point. You have this muscle degenerative disease, right, or disorder, and you find this out about your father, right, somebody who else has been a source of strength for you, the comic relief of the family growing up. What was life like after you just getting hit from every angle at this point?
It was a blur for a long time. I remember just kind of being on autopilot in the hospital. I didn't really have any emotions because after being on pain medication for so long, my body didn't know how to have emotion on its own. All the emotions I created were induced. So I felt nothing for a long time, and that was scary. I remember asking my family, you know, am I ever going to feel normal again? Am I ever going to be able to laugh, to just watch a show and be happy? And months went by. I did physical therapy. I managed to get into a rehabilitation center where I was able to build back my strength. Because now I also had the trach too.
Why'd you get that?
Which was from respiratory failure, from the muscle, my muscle condition. So having a trach, my muscles are failing. I'm thinking to myself, what kind of a life am I gonna live from here? You know, it almost seemed pointless. Doctors told me I'd probably need at-home nursing care. I was gonna need to sleep on a ventilator every night. I mean, I'm seeing this big machine by my bedside with flashing numbers and beeping, and like that was now gonna be my life. And it was terrifying. But again, when I have the family that I have around me, and they all rally and listen, they let me go through my moods, but when it comes time to pick up and say, all right, we got to get back on track now, you got to get back to fighting, that is what gets me through it. You know, my siblings, my mom, they took on the responsibility of learning that ventilator, learning how it works, so that I didn't need at-home nursing care. You know, my sister was able to change my circuit on my machine and hook me up if need be. And it's so funny because something that seemed so scary to me when I first got it, now, I mean, I drive down to Atlantic City, I go to Florida, I go to Jamaica with my ventilator. I set that thing up in less than 5 minutes, and I am dressed and out the door going to dinner. Like, it's just part of my life now, and that's where perspective comes in, because something that seems so daunting at one point is now something second nature. I don't even really think about.
Becomes the new normal.
Yeah.
So before we got to this point of acceptance, right, and a point of just this is how life is, and we're gonna do it anyway. How did you overcome that huge obstacle of addiction? And because there's a lot of people out there that are going through addiction, especially when it comes to pain medication. What was it for you that, number one, got you to stop, and number two, how do you continue to manage that?
Unfortunately, I think for me was hitting rock bottom. I think for a lot of people, rock bottom is what gets them to stop. I had to stop because there was no choice but to stop. Even when I went to the hospital, I went in kicking and screaming. You know, I looked at my family like they betrayed me somehow by taking me in to get help. The drug had completely paralyzed me. So being in the hospital, it's almost like my muscle disorder kind of saved me, because I had to be in the hospital for a certain amount of time, which meant that I had to detox. So when I finally came out of the hospital, it had been a long enough period that I was able to start the journey myself, which made it easier because my body wasn't craving the drug so badly. I think a lot of people don't give themselves the time they need to detox. They'll go to like 2-week programs and think that they're okay, and that's not really long enough. You really need to cleanse your body for an extended amount of time. Again, that varies for person to person. The other issue that I have is that I would have gone for help much sooner had I known that rehab doesn't have to have a stigma. My fear was getting that label, like, he went to rehab. And that just wasn't me. You know, I was Kristoff. I had built a name for myself. I had a reputation. I had all these accolades. I went to Ivy League school. And what now?
You met the Pope.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like,
And then it's like now this name is gonna like have attached to it, oh, did you hear he went to rehab? And it's so ironic to me that getting help is like now puts you in a category of shame and disgust. And so people rather fight that battle on their own or convince themselves they can do it on their own because they don't want that. No one wants to be put in that class like you're whispered about or given the side eye. I mean, and if there's one thing I wish could change, it's that people embrace the idea of other people getting help. Like, we should lift each other up, not put each other down.
well, I think that's what you're doing with your story.
Yeah,
And I know that's what you're doing with your story.
yeah. I just want people to know that there are flaws in all facets of life, and if you embrace that, it's so much more empowering. It makes you so much more relatable to people because we live in a world now where everyone's putting on a show, everything's filtered, everything is edited to perfection, and it's like, where's the real? Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings and nobody's perfect, and we're just dying for something to relate to. We're just dying to not feel alone.
Authenticity, right?
Yeah,
Just
transparency.
So, on that note, we've now got the trach, right? We've now got accustomed to how life is. You're still thriving, but now there's another deep secret that you've been living with from your family standpoint. That it was a feeling of fear, right? That you've had to deal with your entire life. What was that?
My sexuality. It's funny because I would call myself bisexual if I had to, but ultimately I don't like placing labels on myself, especially with everything I've been through. I feel like labels put you in a box, and I don't like that idea. I believe sexuality is fluid, and again, I feel like I was grown in a certain way and taught that certain ideals, it has to be this way. You have to like guys or you have to like girls. Oh, being bisexual doesn't exist. Or it's cliche to love somebody because of who they are or their essence. And I'm sorry, now I'm at a point where I'm not gonna let anybody dictate what I feel inside and conform to any kind of labels, so for me, being able to identify with that and say that aloud to the people that I love the most and actually care what they think about me and being accepting, that is in itself the most gratifying thing for me.
How'd you face that fear with your family?
I didn't even think about it. It's funny because when I overthought the process, that's what would hold me back. When I finally just did it without, like, I remember I just walked into my brother's room and just kind of blurted it out. If I had thought about that moment 1 second too long, I probably wouldn't have done it. So there really was no strategy behind it. I just kind of...
Well, you said you'd written this like elaborate speech.
Yeah, I had gone through the whole, like I had a plan. I had a plan of attack, and that went out the window. It just kind of was not as graceful and like dramatic as I thought it was going to be. And they were so, oh, hey, awesome. Like, and I was almost kind of like pissed because I'm like, wait, I held this in.
This is how you react?
Yeah, and you guys, it's like you guys don't care. Like, what a waste of time.
They loved you, man. They loved you.
Yeah. And I deep down, I always knew they did. So I'm still trying to figure out what that fear was. I mean, it's different with my parents. My parents...
What's your background?
Caribbean. My mom is Jamaican, and my dad is Haitian-born, but he was raised in France. And just, comments are thrown around. And listen, although I knew they loved me personally, you can't help but feel like, again, am I going to be looked at like one of those? It's tough. I knew that my parents loved me, but there was just this fear in me about confronting them with my sexual identity. I didn't want to embarrass them. I didn't want them to be ashamed of me. I didn't want them to feel like there was something wrong with me. I mean, there were all these things, years and years of suppression built up inside me that it just was this overwhelming, crippling fear. Now mind you, I came out to my parents separately, and both in their own way were very accepting, and especially my mom, told me how much she loved me and that it didn't affect our relationship. However, still to this day, it's something that I struggle with actually talking about around her, or my father for that matter. Listen, I'm okay with who I am now. I'm proud of who I am right now. But there's still part of me, it's like all right, we said it once, we're not going to address it again. That's how I am with them. And I hope that I can get to a point where I can overcome that too. I think it's baby steps. It's going to take time. But, that's my reality right now. It's still hard.
So we get through 2 heart transplants. We get through kidney transplant. We get through the trach. We get through coming out to your family. Now we're in the clear, right? Tell me we are in the clear now.
It's so wild to hear you list it back to me, because it sounds so insane. It really does.
To you, to
anyone.
And
I lived it. But no, I wasn't in the clear.
What happened next?
Now, because of being on the ventilator, it had been about, I want to say 2-3 years. There's a lot of pressure buildup, and just all that time with artificial breathing, it affected my lungs, but in a way that I didn't realize. And so my lung collapsed, and the doctors thought that they could fix it with a small tube. So I went in for a small procedure. I was out within a week and a half. I wasn't home for more than 24 hours before waking up with pain and realizing that my entire left lung was completely destroyed. And so I went in for surgery again to repair that lung. After being knocked down and knocked down and knocked down, that hospital stay, I really didn't know how I was going to do it yet again. I was completely drained, especially with the muscle weakness. Now my body was not bouncing back like it used to. I had all these other complications on top of it. I'm on a ventilator, and to have to go through another surgery, I was back at a point of looking out a window and just feeling hopeless, you know. But yet again, what happens? Family, friends, people rally behind me, and I'm once again given that motivational boost I need in abundance to realize I have something to live for, I have something to fight for, and that's what I did. That's what I did. And each time when I made up my mind that I wasn't gonna let this overtake me and that I was in control, that the disease wasn't in control, that's when everything changed. Every single time. Every time.
So we made that choice now.
Yep.
And now we got through this collapsed lung, right? What was life like at this point?
I had a revelation. And having overcome that, being home, being back in my bed, I decided I have a purpose. I have a mission to let, it was like a feeling that overcame me, that I have this duty to kind of show people that, listen, I've been through this, and this, and I'm still here. And to me, I thought to myself, if people can just see me, and if I can just be completely transparent, completely vulnerable, I think that that could send a powerful message. I just didn't know how powerful. So I went in my bathroom, I set up my laptop, and I did like a 10, 12-minute video where I just spewed out my feelings of gratitude and, you know, the gift of life and feeling alive and taking advantage and perspective and putting all that emotion just raw out there for people. And the video went viral. A message that was, in a sense, so simple that anybody can apply. You know, just the way that I presented it, it touched people.
Do you know, in my opinion, do you know why? Because it was your truth.
Yeah.
You were being your authentic self. You were being your true self. And I think a lot of times in life, we put on that face of what we think people want us to be, or we put on that disguise because we want to make others happy. But it's that moment, it's literally that moment that you fully embrace who you are, and we present that to the world,
Yeah.
is the second that you got a response that was totally different than anything you had ever gotten in your life.
Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing feeling,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It was so liberating. Liberating and empowering. Because like you said, I put so much effort into creating this persona, this ideal persona for everybody. And when I finally accepted me for me and just put it out there and not worrying about judgments or what people were gonna say, just like, this is me. That's what got people's attention. Like I said before, I think people are all just dying for something to relate to.
So wow, on so many different levels. This is really the time of the show where I love to really just kick it over to you and let you address the audience, and whether it's guiding life principles, whether it's just motto, whether it's things that help you throughout your day, ways that you make positivity actionable. I really open this up to you to really convey whatever message you want to them, and the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I appreciate being here. I appreciate any opportunity to get to share my story. Like I've said this so many times, when I hear my own story, it's hard for me to believe it. And the one thing I do know now more than ever is that perspective is everything. The way you look at your life, the way you live your life, every single moment, you can find reasons to be happy. There are things I've been through in my life. I can look at the fact that I'm in a wheelchair. I can look at the fact that my muscles are deteriorating. I have a trach. I sleep on a ventilator. I can list problem after problem, and that's going to get me nowhere. But I can also think about the fact that last year I got to see my sister get married. God willing, I'll see my nephew be born in 2 months. Those are the things I choose to focus on. The fact that I woke up this morning, that I'm outside, that I'm not in a hospital bed. I feel like there's so many people in life that they go through the motions and they don't appreciate what they have. My message is simple, just don't take things for granted. Don't take the people in your life for granted. Take advantage. Focus on the positive and not the negative. It's so, so important. Live every day. If you have a negative mindset, try and catch yourself. Change that mindset. You can do it. I'm telling you that because I've done it. Any one of these situations could have taken me out and they haven't. I'm still here. I'm still going to be here. And that's because I made up my mind that I will survive. I think it's important for everybody to push positivity, because without that, we'll never make it. And stick together. That's it.
Wow. So, there's very few times in my life where you could ask anybody who's close to me where I'm speechless. And there's really no words that could describe how powerful your story is. And
thank you.
And what I think your message of hope, of resiliency, of strength, of overcoming adversity, of not giving up. There's one part of the story that I really, it stood out to me, and I'm sure it stood out to you, and that's why you put it in the book. Of I forgot where you were, but there was this older lady, and real quick, what's that story real quick?
It was the day I was actually just going in for a regular checkup. I was with my dad, and again, like you said, my dad was always kind of the comic relief. He always had a way with his words that he would make me laugh and made those hospital situations light, you know? And we were walking down the hallway, and there was an elderly lady. She looked like very ill, and she was in a bad situation. She couldn't see. Clearly, she was blind, and she was laying in a stretcher. And as I walked by, she shot up and reached out for me and started yelling, "Your light, your light. Oh my God, your light is so bright. Can I touch you? Oh, praise God, his light is so bright." And my dad and I had so many instances like that throughout the course of my life, where there were these signs, if you will, and
as the sun comes out.
I'm telling you, I believe in signs wholeheartedly. And so in that moment, my dad and I exchanged a look, and again, it was just kind of an affirmation that I'm being watched over, I'm being taken care of. and that faith is always going to be at the core of who I am. You know, for me, it's just very important that people realize I want them to be motivated by me, but by no means should my issues diminish theirs. I feel as though everyone's issues, it's all relative. If something's a big deal to you, then it's a big deal to you. You shouldn't look at me and say, oh, you know, what I'm going through doesn't matter because of what he's going through. People should be allowed to feel their emotions and go through that. The important thing is just being able to stand up afterwards. Go through it, cry if you need to, get mad, get pissed off, get down, stay in bed for a full day. But the next day, get up out of your bed. Make your bed and go out into the world and conquer it. That's what you gotta do.
Stand up.
Stand up. And I'm still standing.
Yeah.
I will be.
Yes, you are, sir. So, on that note, there's a few things. Number one, thank you for being that light.
Thank you.
I can see it too, and I'm sure anyone who's watching this will be able to see that immediately. Number two, thank you for being here. It's such an honor to have somebody just. It's an honor every week to have people share their story, but this week was extra special because perspective is everything, right? And you have given me more perspective in this past week, this hyper week of us meeting and just getting to know each other. I feel even on a deeper level now.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
And this is just the beginning, which is even better. So thank you. Appreciate it more than you know. And then finally, there's one more order of business. And that's, you ready?
Yes.
That's the way we end our show every week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh.
Have a great day.
You too, man.